So in this video, I'm going to discuss how to build muscle. It's a question I constantly get. So let's take a deep dive into this topic. So basically, the first thing you want to understand is that you need to hit a set amount of protein if you want to build muscle. Now, the ideal optimal intake of protein is going to depend on the person, how much muscle mass they have, basically how hard and vigorous they're actually lifting. But in general, an optimal intake of protein is about 1.25 grams per lean body mass or per ideal body weight. That seems to be a great target for protein. Some you can go to down to 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body weight, but I think hitting that 1.25 is actually more beneficial. Now, most studies show that you want to basically work out each muscle group at least twice a week. So what I like to do is I like to do push-pull exercises. In other words, I like to do biceps and triceps on one day. I like to do chest and back on another day. So you want to hit each of those groups, chest, back, bicep, tricep, at least twice a week. Then you want to integrate shoulders, neck, glutes, legs, core. So that's kind of basically how I sort of work in my routines is I do those bicep, tricep, and chest and back, and then I integrate other exercises to work out my neck, my shoulders, my core, my legs, my glutes. So now that we know basically that you want to exercise those groups twice a week, let's talk about basically how you want to lift. So essentially you want, for maximizing muscle growth, you want to be around the 6 to 12 rep range where the last 1 to 3 reps are difficult. Now, I don't think that people need to train to failure. I think actually you can get similar benefits training close to failure, but you'll recover faster. So leaving 1 or 2 reps in the tank with each set, I think has numerous benefits. Number 1, you'll recover better. You won't be as sore. Number 2, you're dramatically reducing the risk of injuring yourself. Most injuries are going to occur when someone is pushing themselves and their form isn't 100% because they're kind of using momentum to get that last rep in when they really shouldn't be doing that. And that's what happens when you typically lift to failure. So lift close to failure, but you don't have to lift to failure. Of course, there are some sets that you can lift where you can't really go more, but you should still have good form when you're doing that. So that's another key point. So we talked about total protein. We talked about the exercise groups to hit and how often to hit and what reps, and basically the last 1 to 3 reps of those 6 to 12 need to be difficult. So if you're doing, let's say, only 6 reps and none of them are difficult, that weight is too light for you to optimally grow muscle. Now, what about how much protein in one sitting? So if you're only doing like isolated muscle groups, probably around 30 grams of protein will stimulate optimal muscle protein synthesis, unless you're doing full body workouts. Then you want to hit at least 40 grams of protein in one sitting to optimally stimulate muscle protein synthesis. So basically how much protein you ingest in a certain period of time will depend on the type of actually workout you're doing. Now, most of that protein should actually be coming from animal foods. So basically animal protein will stimulate muscle protein synthesis better. It's more bioavailable than plant protein. That's not to say you can't stimulate muscle protein synthesis with plant protein, but just keep that in mind. So we talked about basically hitting those muscle groups at least twice a week. I like to do 3 to 4 exercises though per muscle group. So you're doing each muscle group twice a week, but you want to find 3 or 4 exercises per muscle group. So 3 or 4 different exercises for biceps, same thing with triceps, same thing with chest, same thing with back. So that's really the optimal way to sort of take protein, lift to increase muscle protein synthesis. Now, there's a debate whether you have to have carbohydrates and spike insulin with carbs or not, but I do believe that for someone who is trying to gain muscle mass, that consuming somewhere between 100 to, in elite athletes, more around 300, upwards of 300 grams of carbs will help from numerous physiological aspects, repleting glycogen, having the energy to actually lift this amount of weight. So I think that carb intake, I don't think a low carb diet is the optimal diet for maximizing muscle protein synthesis. I think that fueling your workouts with healthy carbs, and when you consume most of your carbs, actually should occur post-exercise. So timing your carbohydrate intake is very important as well. So if you're consuming, let's say, 100 to 150 grams of carbs per day, maybe half of those, 60 grams, should come right after that heavy lifting session. Okay? Now let's talk about some supplements that will help with lean mass gain. Most people know creatine. Now, we're probably underdosing creatine. Probably the optimal amount of creatine is really around 0.1 grams per kilogram. So if someone weighs 70 kilograms, probably around 7 grams of creatine actually is probably optimal. The optimal way to take this creatine, this will increase the amount of creatine phosphate in the muscle by up to 7-fold, is taking creatine post-exercise. At least 2 studies have shown that post-exercise creatine is better at stimulating muscle protein synthesis and increasing creatine phosphate than pre-exercise. But then also taking creatine with carbs and protein. So really around at least 50 grams of carbs and 30 grams of protein, 40 grams of protein will really help stimulate muscle protein synthesis and really improve the benefits of creatine. Because insulin helps to drive creatine into the muscle. So doing it in that post-exercise state with some carbs, with some protein is going to help maximize, maximize creatine's benefits. Again, up to 7-fold just by doing that. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but collagen has actually been shown in clinical studies to increase lean mass gain as well. So we don't just care about growing our muscle. We also care about the tendons, the ligaments, right? All the connective tissue. That's really important. That's where a lot of injuries happen too, especially on bench press. A lot of people will tear their pectoralis tendon because they don't have good collagen health. So taking a good hydrolyzed collagen supplement, anywhere from 10 to even upwards of 40 grams per day, depending on how athletic someone is and how hard they're training, is really going to improve not only tendon ligament health, but also joint health. I hope this video was helpful.